This week has been a week of wins, and it's not even over yet. President Trump may actually complete his entire presidency in the first 100 days and then just spend the next 3 years and 8 months taking victory laps. The golden age is upon us, and we might just get sick of winning. But alas, though things are looking up, we still have losers in our midst and on our TVs and Congress, and yes, even in our churches. So that brings me to my first loser of the week, Bishop Marian Edgar Buddy, queen of the bitter, pale, angry cat ladies.
In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meatpacking plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals.
Not only was that wildly inappropriate, it was also a load of steaming BS. That woke hag bishop said that gay, lesbian, and trans children are fearing for their lives. What are they fearing exactly? Are they fearful that a narcissistic predator adult will coerce them into puberty blockers or bodily mutilation to satisfy a sick delusion? If so, don't worry, Trump's going to end that crap. And here's what else I'd like to know. Who in the actual hell saw that woman and didn't immediately flag that she'd probably say some dumb crap like that? I mean, come on. If you Google woke angry liberal woman, that woman is literally the first image on the search. She looks like she could be an understudy for Elizabeth Warren or Randy Weingarten, for goodness sake. And of course, after she got her little moment, she went where all the bitter, angry liberal women go, The View. That tracks. But speaking of angry liberal women with far too large a platform, my next loser this week is Democrat darling AOC, who not only fraudulently accused Elon Musk of doing a Nazi salute, but is now melting down like a feral cat over it.
You're going to do a Sig Heil? You're going to do a Hail Hitler? Or their rebrand a Roman salute? From behind the presidential seal of the United States of America? It's on. It's on. And what is so important for us to understand is that as long as we don't give up, it's not over. It's not over. It is not over.
It's over. So a couple things here. First of all, Elon Musk never did a Nazi salute. He was sending his heart out to the crowd, and the leftists willfully and purposely ran with it as a Hail Hitler salute. And you know what? AOC should know that. If taken out of context and purposefully twisted, it's easy to make it look and seem like someone is doing a Nazi salute. But also, rather weird, she's now so bothered by an anti-Semitic gesture, given she supports the freaks in the streets and on college campuses who are literally chanting death to Israel and death to Jews. She's a fraud and a loser, for sure. And so are my last losers of the week, a big group of losers who are still rather confused that ICE agents, immigration and customs enforcement agents may actually, enforce immigration law.
Let me just make sure that I understand what you're saying, because at first you said that the first targets are those with criminal records, but you are also saying that those who are undocumented in the U.S., also who don't have criminal records, people who are working in their communities, maybe even have spouses who are American citizens, they could be swept up with ICE today as well?
What I'm telling you is when we go find our priority target, which is a criminal alien, if he's with others in the United States illegally, we're going to take enforcement action against him. We're going to enforce the immigration law.
Dana Bash has been in news for decades, and I'd assume she has at least a basic understanding of how law enforcement works. But she and many like her have for far too long believed the lie that if you come illegally and you don't commit other crimes beyond your initial crime, you get to stay. No, Dana, that's not how it works anymore. And let me just say to all the leftists wailing about Trump doing exactly what he said he was going to do, take a frickin' hint. This is what we voted for. Trump doesn't BS. He told us what he was going to do, and we voted for it, and now he's doing it, and it's a beautiful thing. Also important to note, a lot of what Trump is doing is simply undoing the chaos and carnage brought upon by Joe. It wasn't Donald Trump that issued the cattle call to invade our nation. That was Joe. Donald Trump is simply fixing the error. You're welcome, or not, it doesn't matter. It's happening. And if these hacks spend every waking moment crying about Trump doing what he said he was going to do, they're going to be in for a long 4 years of promises made, promises kept, outrage. Get well soon. And those are my losers of the week. Joining me now is Off Limits with Ian Haworth, host Ian Haworth. All right, Ian. Obviously, I'm taking special joy in watching these people freak out this week. It's even better than post-election when they were freaking out because now he's actually the president. And we're about 3-4 days in now, not even a complete 4. And he's already done so much. And every day I look at X, turn on Fox News, and I just see more wonderful things happening. Before we go into discussing my losers this week, I have to ask you, what is your favorite thing that he has done thus far?
That's possibly the hardest question I've ever been asked, because this has just been the most amazing couple of days, right? If you're a conservative, everything he's promised, he's been delivering. I think 99% of his executive orders have knocked it out of the park. I think it's got to be stuff on the border. I think it's actually speaking out against immigration. I think it has to be closing the border and actually sending people into these cities to get these criminals out. Because I think for a long time, immigration was one of these topics that people would discuss, but never actually get their hands dirty and actually fix the problem. And I think the fact that Donald Trump is doing this in the first few days, 4 years of this, is going to change the country in all the best ways. So I think the border is the highlight for me. I think it's fantastic.
Highlight for me as well. You know, I had the privilege, and I've said it all week long, but I had the privilege of being in the green room at our Fox News DC bureau with Tom Homan on Monday afternoon. So obviously that was super exciting for me. I mean, if you're not going to be with Donald Trump himself, being with Tom Homan to me is, the next best thing. And I asked him, like, Tom, is this really going to go down? Like, are we really going to get rid of illegal aliens? And he said, oh yes, it's starting tomorrow morning. We are on and cracking. And listen, they're going to send the military. They're going to deploy troops to our southern border, about 10,000 estimated. They're to build barriers, but also to help with some of these flights of the deported illegal aliens. And, some on the left are freaking out like, oh my God, why would you send soldiers, troops to our southern border to enforce it? And to me, that's the most elementary thing that you would do if you were being invaded, is send troops. Now, I think a lot of people are happy about this, but as it progresses, I've been asking my guests all week, do you think that there are going to be some, even that wanted deportations, that are going to get, a little bit shocked at what it looks like when immigration is actually enforced?
I'm on the fence here because I think 4 years ago, yes, right, we saw that. We saw the kids in cages propaganda. We saw the people being dragged out of their homes, all of that stuff. I think now, because Joe Biden's immigration policy was such a disaster, most Americans have actually seen the impact of that. You didn't have to be in a tiny border town in Texas to actually see the impact of it. You didn't have to be in Southern California to see it. They were busing and flying illegal immigrants all over the country, and we saw an explosion of crime. So I think the Americans who have seen that, they won't be put off by the propaganda because they'll remember, like, oh, these were the people who lied to us last time. And then we saw the increase of rapes, we saw the increase of murders, we saw the gang crime, all of these things that people care about more than any of the things that people on CNN want to talk about. And so I'm on the fence. I don't think people will actually fall for it. Maybe in 4 years' time when the problem is solved, because obviously politics is a game of focusing on problems, and once you've solved the problem, it's almost not as beneficial. So I think that's on the Trump administration to keep reminding people of how bad Joe Biden was. But Americans aren't stupid. Americans are very pragmatic, and they've seen the impact of bad immigration policy. And so I think people are all for it. The fact it's a mandate, and Donald Trump is going along with that mandate. So the fact we're not seeing protests like we did last time, we're not seeing people showing up at airports protesting, not seeing people marching in the streets protesting. We're seeing some idiots on TV, but it's nothing like last time. So I think people are on board with it.
Even people that wouldn't necessarily call themselves Trump supporters or vocal conservatives, Republicans, MAGA, whatever, I think that they are happy about what's happening, and they might not say it, but I think they're like, yeah, just go ahead and do it. And I think even some of these Democrat mayors and leaders, I think that they might publicly say, like, we're going to defy the orders. But I think when they're looking at their city budgets and their communities and how the newcomers are draining their resources, I think that they're probably outwardly outraged that the illegals have to go. But I think inwardly they're like, thank God, let Trump do the dirty work. And he'll do the dirty work because you know what? He can't run again. And I think that's great. That not that he can't run again, but that he can actually do what he needs to do without fear of having to get reelected. Let's just get it done now and feelings be damned. Another thing I think is important when we wrap up this immigration conversation is that I'm seeing a lot of people in the comment section and talking about how, you guys wanted to bring down the price of things. And if you deport the illegal aliens, your food prices are going to go up and, you're not going to have cheap labor anymore. And my thought on that is that how Democrats value these people? Is that how they value their humanity? That, hey, we can't get rid of these people because they do crap jobs for less money. Like, what do you think about that narrative? And why don't we flip that on the Democrats more often?
Well, it's classic Democrats, right? I mean, who's going to pick the cotton if we free all these slaves, right? It's exactly the same logic. And also, two things can be true at once, right? You can fight inflation, you can fight prices while also removing people from the workforce. There might be an impact there, but the question should be, why are we paying people below minimum wage? Why are we paying slave labor, essentially? Why are we abusing people in all of these different industries? Surely, if we care about compassion, we care about people, that's also bad. And so the idea of like, who's going to cut my lawn? I see it as like a very elitist question. It's always the people in DC and New York and LA who's like, oh my goodness, who's going to cut the rose bushes? It's like, well, okay, actual Americans are having their jobs stolen. Actual Americans are being hurt in the streets. And so I think it's laughable, honestly, whenever we come up with who's going to do our cheap labor. It's like, you're kind of saying the quiet part out loud here again.
Yeah. You make a very great point. It's like, no, that's what you really think of these people. It's not compassion. It's simply convenience.
Yes,
and
who's
of
going to
course,
scrub my pool?
They want to get them voting, too. We know that. That's still going to be the long-term goal here. Another thing that Trump has done is he said DEI is over. DEI is DIED, dead. And I think it's great. The offices are closing. They're a waste of money. They're a waste of resources. They're incredibly divisive when you start saying you have to mandate this and mandate that, and everyone needs a sensitivity training on this, that, and the other. People are just, I think, tired of it. And I personally think that DEI, whereas woke might make a comeback, I don't think DEI will. I think it might be done. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think the fact is that everyone is caught up to where America already was. I think most people thought this was nonsense. Again, it was the cities, it was the tech companies, it was the so-called highly educated groups of people who thought this was a real thing when the vast majority of Americans are pragmatic and live in the real world and realize it's all BS. And so I think the fact that Trump was elected on one of these topics and spoke to how it was BS, I think people are waking up to it. You're seeing tech companies roll this stuff back. You're seeing a lot of other companies roll it back. I think a lot of it is just recognizing reality. I think we have to kind of keep our defenses up because I think there's always going to be this attack, right? There's always going to be this level of academia pushing for the nonsense. But the fact that we have just slammed the door in its face when we're seeing it still grow in other countries, we're still seeing this kind of nonsense fester in Europe, for example. The fact that America is leading the world and saying no to it, I think is fantastic.
Yeah, well, in his speech this morning, his remote speech to the World Economic Forum, I watched it and I was like, America is so back, baby. Like, the apology tour is long gone. He essentially said, and we talked about it before the show, but in essence, he essentially said, like, we're America, we're the best, we're going to take care of our people. Y'all are going to pay your fair share. If you don't like it, you're welcome to become a state. And I think that was just an excellent message. It was like he's telling the world and all of these smug elitists, hey, guess what? The times of you walking all over the U.S. are over, and we're not doing that anymore. And it's nice to have somebody who's fighting for us. And, I'm curious what you think of this, too. For everything that Donald Trump is doing and the pushback that we are getting, mostly from the media and from the activists, and they're shrieking about the illegal immigrants being deported. They're shrieking about American energy independence and drilling and fracking. They're shrieking about everything in terms of Donald Trump saying, hey, you're going to pay your fair share. All of those things are for the American people, right, left, center. Why are they so angry that their president is putting them first? I can't figure it out.
I know. I mean, it's because they don't care about the American people, right?
But they are Americans.
Yes, but I think they see themselves as a different class. I honestly think there's a something broken in the true left-wing America where they see themselves as above everyone else. They see themselves in the same way they talk about immigration. They can talk about it and pontificate, but it doesn't affect them, except for maybe losing the person who scrubs their pool or, cuts their grass. And I think that's the same with all these things. It's the same with economics when you have all these people who shop relentlessly at Whole Foods and then talking about inflation, it's no big deal. Like, do you remember a couple of years ago when I think it was either Dollar General or one of the dollar stores increased their prices at $1.25, and you had all these people online and in the media saying 25 cents, that's nothing. It's a huge amount. It's a 25% increase. If you're on a budget and you have $20 and suddenly that can go far, nowhere near as far as it could before, that's life-changing. And so I think that's the problem, is they do not see this disconnect. And so whenever we have people who live in that bubble say, oh my goodness, France doesn't respect us anymore. Who gives a damn what France respects? Like, I would care more if France doesn't respect us. That's what should be the goal here. That should be the policy. And so I think that's what they care about, is they want to get in these hobnobbing groups where all these other foreign leaders are sucking up to them, because guess what? We're a money train, right? They're just draining us of hundreds of millions of dollars. Why do you think like Ukraine was so pro-Biden and suddenly sucking up to Trump now? It's because everyone's on the take. And I think the fact is we need to be willing to cut people off, because then you actually see who they really are.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think the worst offenders in that category are woke Hollywood activist liberals. And of course, we had the Oscar nominations come out today. I haven't given a hoot about the Oscars. I think ever since it was maybe even 2020, right before the pandemic, when that movie Parasite won, that was a foreign language film that no one had ever seen. I was like, nobody's watching these movies that y'all are nominating. So I could care less. I really could care less. I grew up watching award shows because living in South Dakota, like, that was glitz and glamour to me, and I enjoyed it. I don't anymore. But I'll tell you this, they nominate a man for Best Actress. Okay, so a biological male, they nominate for Best Actress. And it was actually Matt Walsh that said something I thought was pretty insightful this morning on X. He said, listen, like, the right, we shouldn't be outraged because we're not losing anything. All these Hollywood actresses who are leftists, they did this to themselves, and now they've got a man that's going to probably win Best Actress to send a signal, and they're the ones that are losing out. So what are your thoughts on it? You think they're just going to eat themselves alive?
I hope so. I mean, it was the same thing with Megan Rapinoe, right? When she was going on and on about men should be able to play in soccer. It's like, are you going to say that when you lose your team spot? Like, it's none of them, again, have this attitude because they think they're safe. Everyone thinks they're safe until they're not. And so I think a lot of them, they live in this bubble where you cannot say the truth. It's the emperor's new clothes times a million, right? It's like no one can say that maybe men and women are different and that man dressing as a woman is not a woman. No one can say that. And so I think if they eat themselves alive, I already think they're kind of on like the end of the trail for them, honestly. I don't think they've got the same power or the influence they used to. I think a lot of them are clinging on to that. But if they self-destruct, all the better. We've got other forms of media. We've got other forms of entertainment. I don't think people care about them anymore. I think they need to catch up.
I don't either. And it's so funny to me. It was actually Clay Travis that tweeted out this morning, the best women are men. And it's so funny. And every time I see posts about this, whether it's, the liberal lefty entertainment sites or whatever, people, and they show so-and-so nominated for Best Actress, like, I just go in the comments and I simply say, long live the patriarchy. Because it's so funny to put this back on them. It wasn't long ago when it was Me Too and everyone wore white for Me Too. And now they're literally saying exactly what Clay said, the best women are men. And what a message. It's so funny to watch them destruct, though, when they know how stupid it is and they try to defend it, but they know in their heart it's so stupid. Yeah. So DEI is, I think, on its way out. I think woke will at some point make a comeback. I think probably 2 years in, when things start getting really good, woke will make a comeback. And I say that, and I wonder your thoughts on it. I think because when people are worried about buying groceries and filling their gas tanks and paying their mortgage, they don't have time for woke. But then once things start getting better, you have more time for those luxury items, posting black squares for BLM and being woke and 72 gender options. So I think somewhere around 2026, it's going to try to make a comeback. What do you think the timeline is going to be? And do you think it will make a successful comeback?
I think it'll eventually make a successful comeback. I think what's going to happen is I think the Democrats are going to wake up and realize all they have to do is be normal and they have a chance of actually winning, right? Because they went way too far. We're not talking about slightly not normal. They went crazy. Like, Joe Biden went full on crazy. He was as left-wing as you could possibly be when he was awake. And everyone else he gave power to was just doing the most insane things. And everyone looked at that and thought, no. Even people who weren't Donald Trump fans 4 years ago were voting for Trump enthusiastically. And so I think the Democrats will come out. They'll be much more like the John Fetterman line of like, this is crazy. DEI is bad. Immigration, illegal immigration is bad. Crime is bad. They'll say all these things. But I still think they'll have the woke movement behind them. They'll have the woke fringe of their party behind them. And that's still festering in academia. We're all talking about like DEI and all that stuff being eradicated. academia is still a battlefield that I think conservatives need to really stay focused on. Because I think that's the one place that this will fester and this will keep growing. Because it's more insulated than everything else, right? It's very much a sort of self-protective bubble.
Yeah.
In a way that entertainment is not, economics is not, government is not. And so I think it'll keep festering there, whether it takes a couple of years or whether it takes a generation, it'll still be there. And so I think that's why we need to put our foot on the accelerator more. We need to look at this as like a first step rather than a last step. That's always my worry with elections. Like, yeah, our guy won, and I think it's fantastic Donald Trump's doing all these things in the first couple of days, but it's a constant fight because the second we take our feet off the gas a little bit, these people will come rushing in to fill the void again. So I don't think it'll necessarily be as quick as 2 years, but they're always going to be there because these people were here before. They just waited for their moment. Like the transgenderism stuff took years to bubble to the surface. They're not going anywhere because they're still working in universities. They're still preaching, essentially, in college campuses. So we need to do something about those people, too.
You're exactly right about that. We need to stay vigilant. Young people are trending in the right direction, at least based on what we've seen the last 5 years. But now is no time to get complacent. You brought up John Fetterman. So in kind of keeping with the Fun Thursday theme, there was a lot of uproar about two people at the inauguration. John Fetterman, who was wearing signature basketball shorts and a hoodie. We have the footage of that we'll play momentarily. Yep, there he is. So we've got that. So I want to address that one first. What do you think? Some people are like, whatever, it's him, let him be him. Some people are saying that's wholly inappropriate.
I think it's somewhat inappropriate. I think it's somewhat disrespectful of the office and the occasion. I'm not going to put too much effort into complaining about too much because I think the list of things that are more important are so much bigger. But it's also kind of his brand, pretending to be a regular guy, even though he's somewhat of an armchair socialist who's living off daddy's money for his entire career. But I've also got, I'm ashamed to say, somewhat of a soft spot for John Fetterman, just because he's been one of the few voices in the Democratic Party to speak truth on the topic of what's going on in Israel and Hamas and the explosion of terrorism across the world. And so I'm willing to give him a tiny bit of leeway to dressing like an idiot because he's actually speaking basic truths. I don't think he's a Republican. I'm not going to support him necessarily. But I'm on the grand list of things I care about. He's very low on the list.
Well, I tell you this, if every Democrat were a John Fetterman Democrat, it would be much easier to bring this country together and get things done because he is certainly more moderate. And a true moderate, maybe he's faking it, I don't know. But, the things that he said and stood by, he doesn't let the woke mob get to him and he stands his ground. So I think it's important. Another fashion choice, of course, at the inauguration that a lot of people are very fired up about is Lauren Sanchez, fiance of Jeff Bezos. She came in wearing a lacy bra thing under a blazer, and some folks, Megyn Kelly saying she looks like a hooker, some folks, talking about how Zuckerberg maybe was looking at her chest. Listen, do you think that she is getting the backlash she deserves, or do you think people are making too much out of nothing?
I think this is a hard one. I think people are going a little too far. Like, if you're going to hate someone over that, but it was pretty appropriate, right? She was Silicon Valley right there, right?
It was Silicon Valley, I will tell you that.
Lingerie,
it is a new Silicon Valley, Ian.
So it's like, it's inappropriate. Just wearing lingerie to an event like that is inappropriate. You're doing it to be looked at. And so when people look, you can't then be surprised. But also, that's kind of her character, right? Like, he divorced his wife of however many years and just got a ton of Botox, basically, had his muscles done, whether that's real or not. And, this is his new fiance. And so I think she's playing the part that she's meant to play. I think people shouldn't be too surprised. But again, I don't really care. It's the kind of thing that's like, yeah, it's funny she shouldn't wear a bra on national TV to, the inauguration. But, there are worse things that happen in America and certainly in the White House. So I'm not going to focus too hard on it.
Well, yeah, we had a trans flasher on the White House lawn a couple years ago.
Good
so
times.
when you're rating things on that scale. But I would also say, even Kim Kardashian, when she went to the White House, wore like a turtleneck.
Yeah.
Even Kim Kardashian could be decent, but I get it. This woman, does she really care? She's about to marry one of the richest men in the world. I think she's probably like, F you, talk about me. I could care less. And in the scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal. And I think people might attach themselves too much to these cultural wars, and it makes Republicans look square when they're like, oh, the outrage or whatever, like, whatever, I don't really care. It was a great day. I think it was a smart idea to move it inside. I think that, the viewing experience was maybe even better. And it was very cold there. So listen, let's not have someone die outside of hypothermia trying to watch the inauguration, because they'd pin that on Trump too. Last thing I want to talk to you about as we wrap up week one. What is the one thing that he hasn't done already that you are most excited about coming out of the Trump administration? Maybe in week two. Who knows? We're moving at a rapid pace here.
Honestly, this is like a little bit of out left field, but I think the stuff he could do on crypto is really interesting. I think a lot of the things he's already talked about, like he's already talked about the economy. I think in terms of things he'll fix, I don't think that'll actually be as impactful. I think things will fix themselves. I think government has actually less impact if you take away spending on the economy than anything else. The border, he's obviously knocking out of the park. I think foreign policy, he's doing okay. I think the stuff on Israel has been pretty bad, but we can talk about that another time. But I think the role crypto can have in the future, I think America can be a real leader there. We're already talking about AI. We're already talking about all these other technologies. But I think the role of cryptocurrency in decentralizing finances across the world, reducing the power and influence of banks, for bank transfers, things like that. I think, we're all talking about the Trump meme coin and the Melania meme coin, which I think are a bit of a joke, bit of a cash grab. But if he can make America a true leader in terms of making crypto at the forefront of world finances, that could change the world in so many good ways. I've heard some whispers about that happening. I know he has some people around him who have significant interest in crypto. And so that's kind of what I'm interested to see, honestly, because I think everything else he's already touched on. It's been an amazing first week. Like, I did not expect it to be this busy or this effective. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting one for me.
And I think the tariffs, when he says maybe they'll start on February 1st, that's next Saturday, maybe the tariffs will start. And I think that these other countries are going to start, minding their P's and Q's a little bit when they're hit with that tariff. I really don't think that these countries can sustain it. And Donald Trump, unlike many others, understands that when you are the big dog in the park, you can bark the loudest. And for so long, we've been pretending that we're not. Like, oh, we don't want to upset Canada and Mexico. They're our biggest trading partners. Yeah, true, but we're not going to be treating them like they're the big dog, is because they're not. And it's okay to say that. Like, when you are number one, you get to act like you're number one, not like you're number 50, which is what we've been doing under Sleepy Joe, who had no control over his own administration. But he's Jill's problem now, and we don't care. Kamala is California's problem. We don't care. But Ian, it has been a great discussion. I know we talked after the historic election. Now we're talking, in this historic week of wins. So I always appreciate you being here and discussing it all with me. And the woke bishop, which we didn't even get to, but she's embarrassed herself enough. So we'll just leave her to her view days and her moment, which will quickly dissipate. Thank you for being here, Ian. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, that does it for this episode of Tomi Lahren is Fearless. Catch me back here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. We've got a special episode on making America healthy again, everything that you need to know about medicine, vaccines, all of that. Also, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. Don't forget, you can also catch full episodes on Fox Nation whenever you like. That does it for us from Nashville. God bless and take care.